All right, how's everybody doing? Hotep, how's everybody doing today? Hey, this is Michael M. Hotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. So it is Monday, September 16th, 2019. So everybody share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. All right, so I saw this story from AtlantaBlackStar.com, and I posted this article on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, and a lot of people have been responding to it. I also saw an article from rawstory.com and also the local news affiliate there in the Georgia area, also local news affiliate. What is this? WSB TV. So this story is dealing with hashtag while black, hashtag banking while black. And we've seen a number of different stories over like the past 2 years, especially since Trump has been in office. We see stories of white people calling the police on African Americans. Okay, now this is not hate speech. I'm actually dealing with the news. This is what happened. So many people remember the stories of things like African Americans having the police called on them for barbecuing. We saw this in Oakland, California. White woman called out for racially targeting black men having barbecue in Oakland. We've seen we saw it with an Airbnb in Southern California. We saw 3 African Americans had the police called on them because people thought they were robbing the house and they were actually staying at an Airbnb. One of them was the granddaughter of Bob Marley. Her name is Denisha Prendergast. We've seen incidences that take place at pools and African Americans having police called on them because people don't think they belong at the pool, or people don't think they live there at the complex. So we've seen a number of different stories like this. But this one here is another one of those hashtag while black stories. Okay. And there's a good article from NBCnews.com that deals with, talks about a lot of these stories. Hashtag while black, calling police on black people become teachable moments for law enforcement. And they talk about incidences at swimming pools, shopping at a T-Mobile store in Northern California, waiting inside of a Starbucks in Philadelphia, etc. Right? So when we look at this story here from AtlantaBlackStar.com, is a really good story about this. I feel like he's up to no good. Georgia bank teller calls cops on black doctor she thinks was there to commit a robbery. Georgia bank teller calls cops on black doctor she thinks was there to commit a robbery. All right. So this is a story, and African-American business owners also post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Right. So this is a story of Dr. Anthony Onyegbula, Onyegbula. Okay. Dr. Anthony Onyegbula. And he is a doctor in Georgia. This incident took place at the United Community Bank in Henry County, which is a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia. United Community Bank. And Dr. Anthony spends much of his time treating cancer patients in the metro Atlanta suburb of Henry County. And he said all he wanted to do was open up a new bank account. Instead, he found himself under suspicion of being a criminal after a bank worker, it was a bank teller, dialed police on him. All right. So he said that they said I was suspicious. I was wearing a hat and they thought I wanted to rob the bank. And I was like, what? And he said, until it happens to you, you never know what it feels like. Okay. Until it happens to you, you never know what it feels like. And I want to go to the actual story here. I think we have it queued up. This segment is from WSB TV Channel 2 there in Atlanta. I want to go to this story so you can actually hear what happened. This segment should...
At 11, a local doctor says all he wanted to do was open a bank account. Minutes later, he says he was face-to-face with police. Apparently, a bank worker had called 911. Channel 2's Matt Johnson reports from Henry County. This man thinks it was a case of racially profiling.
The bank employee says that she was alarmed when the man tried to use a wrong door. She also didn't like how he was on his phone, but that man turned out to be a local doctor on the phone with his wife, and little did he know a 911 call was being made about him being a possible threat.
Until it happened to you, you never know what it feels like.
Anthony Onyegbula spends most of his days treating cancer patients as a doctor in Henry County. But Thursday afternoon, he spent part of his day under suspicion of being a potential criminal.
They all said I was suspicious. I was wearing a hat, and they think I want to rob the bank. I'm like, what?
He says he was at the United Community Bank on Eagles Landing Parkway to open a new account with his wife. While he was on the phone with her, an employee was on the phone with 911.
He went to the front door, and he's been on his phone, and I called from my phone telling the employees, lock the front door.
So I looked at it. The door said close at 4:30. And my time said about 2:15, 2:10. I'm like, what happened?
He's been on his phone out front, and we have no cars in the parking lot. He's a walker, so I feel like he's up to no good.
Onyegbula says he and his wife left and went to another nearby bank, and that's when they realized police had been called for him.
Here come the same police. Came inside the bank. Now it's two of them. And then they said they told the manager to clear the room because they wanted to talk to her.
The officers left without filing any charges. So you think it was racial profiling?
Yes, it's so sad because I live in this community.
I was able to speak with someone at the bank who sent over a statement that reads, quote, providing excellent customer service is our top priority, and we are disappointed that we didn't deliver that in this case. We posted a full apology on our website at WSBTV.com. In Henry County, Matt Johnson, Channel 2 Action News, Night Beat.
Okay, so that is from WSB TV. And I wanted you to actually hear Dr. Anthony Onyegbula. You get to actually hear his frustration, etc. All right, so there's a few problems. There's a few problems with this. All right, so I want to kind of lay this out. For you. All right, I want to break down what happened. How's everybody doing? Okay, everybody share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Share it on YouTube also. So this was in Stockridge, Georgia, right? Now, it is true. Now, I've been to a number of different banks. I've been to banks here in Detroit. Now, I don't know if this pertained to this particular bank here. It is true that in some banks, in certain areas, they have a policy that people have to remove hats and sunglasses. I've been to banks, whether it's Charter One or some other banks, PNC Bank on Woodward, kind of near Wayne State. They will have a sign there that says you have to remove your hat, sunglasses, things like that. That's so that the surveillance camera can record your face, okay, in case you want to rob the place. This is true. However, the question I would ask is, one, how often do you call the police on white people who are wearing hats and white people who are walking? Why would you think that because you don't see any cars out in the parking lot, maybe he got dropped off, maybe someone was running an errand and coming back to get him? Why would you just automatically assume because he wears a hat and he goes to the wrong door and you think he's not driving a car, that he's there to rob the place? Okay, so that's problematic. Now, with this particular bank, I don't know if they have that policy there that you have to remove hats. I haven't seen anything that says that, but I do know that does exist at some banks. And I've been in banks. Now, I've been in banks where I was wearing a hat and they asked me to remove it. And I remember one specific time I saw the sign at a particular bank and I didn't remove my hat because I wanted to see if somebody said something to me. Nobody said anything to me. Now, I've never seen them ask white people to take their hats off. This is the other thing. I've never seen a situation where the teller or an African-American security guard asked white people to take their hats off, even though the sign is there on the counter that says to remove your hat and sunglasses. Okay. So I just want to let people know this, right? So the teller fears that he's up to no good. And she actually tells this to the police. I feel like he's up to no good. All right. I'm going to go step by step through this very quickly here. So the police show up. Now, people have to understand, if the police get a call about someone suspicious and they think they're going to rob the bank, then the police are going to show up. But it's up to the police how they assess the issue, how they handle the issue, how they treat the people. All right. So they asked a few questions and the police left. They didn't file any charges. They realized, look, this person is not trying to rob the bank. But what we're looking at here is definitely racial profiling. And, you know, we call it banking while black, et cetera. But I want to go to the statement from United Community Bank. Okay. The regional president for United Community Bank sent a statement. They sent a statement to WSB TV. It says, quote, "For privacy reasons, we do not comment publicly about the details of any customer or potential customer transactions. However, providing excellent customer service is our top priority, and we are disappointed we did not deliver that to doctors Onyegbula, okay, and Tega, Tedga. So it's the doctor and his wife. This afternoon, we were able to speak directly with Dr. Onyegbula and his wife to personally apologize for the misunderstanding. We are glad for the opportunity to connect and improve and hope to have an opportunity to earn their business in the future." Okay. So this is the official statement. Now, what I want to know is why did the teller feel the need to call the police on this brother, one, and how often do you call the police on white people who go into the wrong door or on their cell phone, wear a hat, you look outside, don't see any cars? How often do you call the police on white people like that? Right? Now, some people may say, well, they should put their money in the black-owned bank and they won't have to deal with this problem, right? So putting your money in the African-American-owned bank is a good idea. But at the same time, we have to confront white supremacy and racism and racial profiling and things like this head on as well. Okay, things like this have to be exposed. So putting your money in the African-American bank is good, but it doesn't address this issue and issues like this. So he said that they think they need implicit bias training or something. I forgot how he explained it. Implicit bias training or racial profile training as well. Okay, and those are good to have for corporations. Those are good to have for businesses that are dealing with people from different ethnic groups, different backgrounds, etc. That's good in general to have. What I would like to know is what type of training is already in place at this bank, okay? And how do you determine, like, what process do you go through to determine when to call the police on somebody who you think may be trying to rob the bank? Okay, so these are questions that I have. But when she just came to the conclusion that she felt that he was up to no good and that he was walking, and things like this, because how many people are going to rob a bank and walk away? Most of the bank robberies I hear about, people drive away. Okay. Let's look at some of your comments here. Kyle, the originators of stealing, talking about somebody. Andrea said his life is not as important as her comfort. Marcus, this will not happen. Black people will put their money in black banks at this time, but you can still be racially profiled walking down the street, driving down the street with your money in a black owned bank. You can still be racially profiled. You may not be racially profiled at that particular bank. You can still be racially profiled. If you look at all these instances of hashtag while black, most of them didn't take place at a bank. Okay, so putting your money in African American owned bank, okay, that's a good idea, but that doesn't confront racial profiling and deal with white supremacy and racism. The name of the bank, Mimi asked, what is the name of the bank? United Community Bank. Okay, United Community Bank there in Stockridge, Georgia. Okay, so this is a doctor. It sounds like he's maybe Yoruba, but this is a doctor who's from Africa. Don't know how long he's been here in the States, but and that's the that's the other thing. This brother has more education than probably most of the people there in the bank, and instead of you. It appears like assistance was not offered to him. Hello, sir. How are you doing? What can we help you with? Would you like to open up an account? Oh, sir, you can come in this door. Hey, we can help you over here. Instead of them welcoming him, they treated him like a suspect. They treated him like a suspect. Okay, Gigi said, Michael, it could be anything, everything. It all boils down to breathing while black, right? But see and the other thing that we look at, and if you look at the if you all saw the broadcast I just did with the panel of African American women talking about Nicki Minaj, her comments on a past abusive relationship, and talking about how she felt love had to hurt. And I dealt with the impact that the media has on shaping the way we think, feel, act, and behave, and how the media projects negative images of us. Those negative images that are projected of us influence the way people think, feel, act, and behave towards us. Okay. So this is rawstory.com has an article about this as well. I checked out the article from Raw Story. I looked at a few of these articles here. We'll look at some more of your comments. So this incident happened last Thursday at the United Community Bank on Eagles Landing Parkway in Stockridge, Georgia. Okay. And the doctor said he was waiting to open an account with his wife. As he spoke outside on the phone with her, he was locked out of the building. A worker inside was on the phone with police. All right. So this is straight up racial profile. Now, I want to see what's going to happen to the employee. Will the employee be disciplined? Will the employee be fired? Are they going to institute implicit bias training? So we saw what happened with the Starbucks there in Philadelphia. All right. Is this bank going to take actions like this? But, if people decide they don't want to put their money in this bank, well, I can't say I blame them. All right, let's see. We'll go to some more of your comments. And then African-American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. Our current promotion is get 3 months for the price of one. Get 3 months for the price of one is our current promotion. Let's look at Neil. Okay, let's see. King's Fountain, with all due respect, this may not be directly on the subject, but I wanted to know if you are African American or using the term considering no, I am African American. Look at me. Go Google Michael Imhotep. Okay, Gigi, let me look at some more of your comments here. Let's see here. Okay, Andrea, all this has been well documented. what do we envision as the next step or remedy? We need to attack these negative stereotypical images of us in the media that criminalize us. That's one thing that has to happen. Your thoughts create feelings, your feelings create actions and behaviors, your actions and behaviors create results. If you go look at the March 2015 article from thinkprogress.org called "How News Outlets Convince You That Most Criminals Are Black," how news outlets convince you that most criminals are black. It talks about how local news, they did a nationwide study and they looked at local news stations across the country. And they found that local news stations disproportionately run stories that show African Americans as being the perpetrators of crime. And it was disproportionate to their arrest rates. So they looked at, like, in the city of New York, for instance, and they found that about 75% of the news stories that dealt with crime had African Americans as the perpetrators, but African Americans only made up about 59% of those who were arrested for crimes. So what happens is that when you sit at home and watch local news stories, and you're out in the suburbs, or even if you're in the city, and you see story after story after story of African Americans being the perpetrator, committing crimes, but you see very little stories of white people committing the crimes, then it gives you a distorted view of a targeted group of people. And we see this across the board. We see this in, one of the biggest industries that criminalizes the image of African Americans is negative corporate controlled hip hop. Negative corporate controlled hip hop, which goes all around the world and depicts us as being criminals, depicts us as being drug users, alcoholics, depicts our women as being hypersexualized, okay, promiscuous, things like this. Now, I'm not against hip hop. Okay, I grew up listening to hip hop. I'm not against hip hop. I know there's a lot of positive hip hop out there. A lot of it doesn't get airplay on the corporate conglomerate on radio stations. All right, but we have to understand the power of image. Most of us don't understand the power of image. What we're doing, this contributes to over incarceration. This contributes to privatized prisons. All of this is interconnected, interrelated. Okay. Mimi, how you doing, Mimi? So we have to understand that we have to attack those images. We have to go after the corporations that are putting out these negative stereotypical images of us. We have to understand that many of us are invested in entertainment companies that put out negative corporate controlled hip hop, and we're invested through our 401k plans and our pension fund plans. So we need to call our money managers that handle our 401k plans and pension fund plans and find out what industries are our dollars invested in, what companies are our dollars invested in, and divest from those companies that are putting out negative images of us, divest from privatized prisons. Many of us are invested in privatized prisons and don't know it. We saw in June of 2017, we saw that employees in the city of New York, city employees in the city of New York divested $48 million of their pension fund dollars from 3 privatized prisons, Geo Group, Core Civic, and G4S, because they found out they were invested in privatized prisons. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of people don't understand how we are financing our own dehumanization. Okay, so we have to look at where our dollars are being invested. It's not just where you spend your money, like the stores you spend your money with. It's not just that. It's also where you are investing your money as well. Okay, and that ties into gentrification, because a lot of our pension fund dollars and 401k dollars are then loaned out by money managers, loaned out to business developers who get loans using our dollars, okay, pension fund dollars and 401k dollars, and then they come into our communities and gentrify our communities with our own money. But a lot of us don't understand how that works. They don't understand that connection. So once again, and this is something Reverend Al Sharpton has talked about. This is an initiative this year for the National Action Network. And I've heard Reverend Al Sharpton talk about this, but and he talked about how he spoke at one union, and I think it was in the New York area. The union was 82% African American, okay, and they had it's like 82% African American. They had a number of people who handled their money, number of money managers. Only one of the money managers was African American, but a lot of people don't know that you can determine who handles your money, and you can determine the industries that you are invested in. They just sit back and accept it. They don't know that they have any power over that. Okay. And they don't understand that, wait a second, people are loaning your money out to business developers who come in and then gentrify you out of your own community with your own dollars. So this is why we have to understand, you know, I'm on the Black Agenda tour with Michi X and Jice Johnson and others, and we'll be in where will we be next? We'll be in Orlando, Florida, the weekend of October 12th. Visit the Black Agenda on tour.com, the Black Agenda on tour.com for more information. And I deal with how politics impacts the economic conditions of African Americans. I do a presentation called 6 Principles of Political Self-Defense, how laws and policies impact the economic conditions of African Americans. Because a lot of us don't understand how laws at the federal level, state level, and at the city level, at the local level, impact our economic conditions. Okay, and politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. But see, since, you know, oftentimes we're not taught this information at home, all right, and since civics has been taken out of schools, a lot of our people don't know this. A lot of our people don't understand how we're financing our own dehumanization. Okay, we got Lynn Ferguson, GG. Okay, and I'll post a link to the article, the study, the article from thinkprogress.org. We'll post that link here. It deals with how news outlets help convince you that most criminals are Black. But we've seen, especially since Trump has been in office, we've seen that certain people feel emboldened and they call the police on African Americans for very trivial things. Okay. They call the police and a lot of times the police don't arrest anybody. They realize this is bogus. But the other thing that we've seen is that we've seen some white people lose their jobs when these stories go viral. We've seen some white people lose their jobs also because of the backlash as well. All right. And, you know, if it's a situation, and in some cases, I understand it. And in some other cases now, it's a two-way street. Okay. If it's sometimes what happens is because the story goes viral, somehow their place of employment gets associated with the act that they did and they get fired from their job. In some cases, you know, you really get into a situation where this can come back on some of us. And a lot of people are not talking about this. This may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. But see, so this is why we have to be careful. The reason why is because say you're at a Black Lives Matter rally. Say you're at a rally protesting police brutality it doesn't have to be Black Lives Matter. Okay. You can be at a rally. Say you're at a rally protesting a rally in support of Colin Kaepernick. And people see this and then contact your job or circulate it on social media. Okay. So what I'm saying is that in some cases, you know, when people lose their job, if it's a situation where you are in your uniform for your job, if it's a situation where somehow your place of employment is somehow in the mix with you calling the police on people, okay, I can see it. But in some other cases, just to be quite honest, that can come back on some of us. If you at a protest calling out police officers and things like this for a police shooting, I can see where people don't like you calling out police and then contact your place of employment, and it could come back on you. So, I mean, so when, when you have a pendulum, right? It can swing this way and it can swing back that way, right? So we have to be careful about what we wish for, because just as you have issues and you have a situation over here and this person gets fired because it went viral on social media, what they did, and their employer sees it and say, hey, we don't want you to be associated. We don't want to be associated with you. This puts the company in a bad light once people find out where they work, even if their job didn't have anything to do with it. This doesn't excuse what they did. But in some cases, I've seen some cases, and I have to sit back and ask, because I understand how this could come back on us. I have to sit back and ask, well, what does that job have to do with this? Now, if you there, you got a hat, if you have on gear that has the logo of the company you work for, things like this, why you're doing this, why you're calling the police, things like that. Okay, well, that's a little different. But there's some other cases where I have to, sit back and ask, well, what does that job have to do with this? Because I can see how that can easily come back on us. When we're protesting police brutality, when we're at rallies, whether it's Eric Garner or something like that, where it would support a Colin Kaepernick, okay? So we have to be careful with that. Okay, let's look at some more of your comments here. Okay, you got Eugene, Sharon, thanks for this. That's something that never crossed my mind. Awesome show. Yeah. See, it's the same thing with it's like the same thing with the First Amendment, right? I wrote an article dealing with the First Amendment because most people only talk about the First Amendment when it applies to messages they agree with. But the First Amendment also applies to messages you don't agree with. Now, you can't incite violence, right? You can't call for harm to come to people with the First Amendment. First Amendment has limitations. But for instance, there was, I wrote an article after it was a Trump campaign rally. This is back like 2016 during the campaign. So Trump campaign rally that happened in Chicago. And it happened, if I remember correctly, it's like downtown Chicago. And you had African-American students on the campus who organized, and their goal was to shut down the rally, right? Now, everybody knows I don't like Donald Trump at all, period, none. And I warned you all during 2016 about Trump. And I said we need to have a record turnout of African Americans to come out and vote to stop Trump so he doesn't become president. I warned you all about that. People didn't want to listen to me. But it's within your First Amendment right to protest a Trump campaign rally. That's within your First Amendment right. It's not within your First Amendment right to try to shut down the rally. Because in trying to shut down the rally, then you infringe upon other people's First Amendment right to hear the message. Because see, if we go back and look at that, that was a rally where the Trump campaign went through all of the proper channels to do the paperwork to actually have the rally there. Now, I disagree with them having the rally there, but they went through all the proper channels to do that. So if you want to protest the rally, if you're outside, you want to protest the rally, that's fine. That's within your First Amendment right. If you're inside, you want to protest the rally, that's fine. They're going to escort you out. Okay. All right. That's within your First Amendment right. But you don't have the right to try to shut down the rally, because in shutting down the rally, now you infringe upon other people's First Amendment right to be able to hear the message and you infringe upon people's First Amendment right who are on stage to be able to speak. See, when people talk about the First Amendment, they usually only apply it to messages they agree with. It also applies to messages you don't agree with. And this is what people miss. It's a double-edged sword. So when we talk about First Amendment, we have to be careful. Okay, it's a double-edged sword. All right. We got Monica. Okay, so everybody, now I'll be at the All Black National Convention that Dr. Boyce Watkins puts on. I'll be at that September 27th through the 29th. I get in late Friday, and I'm speaking that Sunday, the 29th. I'm on a panel discussion dealing with power and politics. That's 9:45 a.m. And it's taking place at the Marriott. Okay, so visit allblacknationalconvention.com, allblacknationalconvention.com. Visit allblacknationalconvention.com for more information, and I'll have my DVD lectures there also. If you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. That helps us keep doing the research. Finance our Sunday night show, stay on the air, pay the bills, helps pay, cover travel expenses when I have to travel to different places to speak, things like that. We have Hidden Colors 5, available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. For each copy of Hidden Colors 5 you purchase, you get 3 of my DVD presentations free. Okay. So you can order that as well. And that you get 3 of my presentations in digital download format free. It includes 6 principles of political self-defense. That's the lecture that I did July 21st, 2019 at the Black Homeschooling Conference in Atlanta. And then it also includes lessons from the film Black Panther, economic guerrilla warfare, political self-defense, or how to Wakanda to vote. And it also includes one other one I can't think of right now. All right. And then be sure to register for my the online course that I teach on Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade happening. And we deal with the transatlantic slave trade also. That is a 8-week, 16-hour online course that I teach. We deal with thousands of years of history. It's regularly $130 on sale, $80. All right. Let's see here. Who else we have here before we get out of here? Look at some more of your comments here. But this is this is an interesting story here dealing with this doctor. I want to see what transpires from. I want to find out, is anybody going to be disciplined? Anybody fired? Are they going to have any type of implicit bias training? Anything like that as well. Yeah, so he suggested that the bank employees undergo sensitivity training. But also, I want to know, how many white people do you call police on like this? When I hear stories about this that take place in a work setting, that's a question I always have. How many white people do you call a police on? All right, let's see. And then the other thing is, the bank teller who called the police said that he is a walker. She said, he's a walker, so I feel like he's up to no good. Okay. Is that part of their training, to be suspicious of people who are walking and not driving? I mean, because people can, if somebody's walking, people can live there in the neighborhood or live in the area and walk to the bank. Or they can park around the corner, they can park down the street or something like that. So is that part of your training, to be suspicious of someone who's walking? Because most of the time when I hear about a bank robbery, the people ain't walk, they didn't walk away. Their getaway was not on foot, it was driving. So that's another question that I have also. All right, let's see here. Sabrina, how you doing? Sabrina says truth. All right. Hey, guys, look, we got to get out of here. Follow me on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep on YouTube, Imhotep on YouTube also. And be sure to visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All of my DVD lectures are there. We have bundle packs also. My latest bundle pack is the Black Migration 1619 to 2019 bundle pack, okay? Because we know this is the 400th year anniversary of 29 Africans coming into Virginia. They're at Point Comfort. African people who had been here in this land going back tens of thousands of years, okay? And if you read the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, by Dr. David Imhotep, his book thoroughly documents that history. Okay, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep. I interviewed him August 21st, 2019, the day after August 20th. Check out that interview. We have it on Facebook and at our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep as well. We dealt with a lot of this history. But what's interesting, and I'm going to do a separate broadcast dealing with this, is that the Spanish were taking Africans into the territory we call South Carolina in 1526, okay? And that's not talked about a lot. So this is 93 years before 1619. Okay, so for a number of reasons, even though August 20th, 1619 is important to study, for a number of reasons, that's not when we first came here. So why is that still being pushed as when our history started in this country? Okay, if we actually understand our history, we understand that this was our land stolen from us. If we actually understand our history, this was our land stolen from us. Okay, so why is that false narrative still being pushed? And the articles they have at the 1619 Project, these are good articles. They have some good articles. Now, most of them don't deal with 1520, don't talk about 1526, and definitely don't talk about the African presence here in this land going back tens of thousands of years. But this is the insert. This is from the New York Times dealing with the 1619 Project, and it has all the articles from the 1619 Project in here as well, at least most of the articles, okay? And then I've been reading some of them online at New York Times, NewYorkTimes.com. But it says here on the front, we've got to tell the unvarnished truth. And that's a quote from John Hope Franklin, who's a historian and author. We've got to tell the unvarnished truth. That's true. So why do you start our history in this country in 1619 then? Because we were here for tens of thousands of years. The Khoisan, who have the oldest DNA on the planet, come from Southern Africa, go all around the world. They were here going back at least 51,700 years ago. When you look at the discovery from Dr. Albert Goodyear, who's an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina, the discovery he made in 2004 in Allendale County, South Carolina, they found 13 different types of evidence, 13 different types of evidence documenting an African presence in this country going back tens of thousands of years. So why do we start with 1619? And then even when we look at Henry Louis Gates Jr., and even though I disagree with him on some aspects of the way he tells the history, especially dealing with the transatlantic slave trade, he does write some good books. He does write some good articles. I've read dozens of his articles, but he talks about Juan Garrido. So a lot of people have not read this book here. So many people saw the PBS 6-part series he did, The African Americans, Many Rivers to Cross. A lot of people don't know that he put out a companion book to that 6-part series, okay? And in here, he talks about Juan Garrido, like in pages, was it 3, 4? Yeah, page 3. He talks about Juan Garrido. Perhaps one of the best known and most colorful of the free black conquistadors was Juan Garrido. Born about 1480 in West Africa, Juan Garrido either was sold to Portuguese slave traders or somehow traveled on his own to Lisbon, Portugal, where about 10% of the city was of African descent. So he goes on to talk about how Juan Garrido comes into Florida in 1513 with Juan Ponce de Leon, the Spanish conquistador. Okay, this is 1513. This is before you're looking at 13 years before 1526. Okay, this is 1513. But Wangarito is not even talked about. So for a number of reasons, when people talk about we first came to this land in 1619, no, that's not true. We did come here. What happened in 1619 with that white line slave ship and those 20-odd Africans being traded for supplies and water and things like this, that did happen. But that's not when we first came here for a number of reasons. But this is what happens when you don't understand history. It's just like the panel discussion that took place with Killer Mike and T.I. and Candace Owens, things like this. You know, I got to do a separate broadcast breaking that stuff down. Man, there's a whole lot of misinformation in that. You know, because I'm telling you, if I had been on that panel, it'd have been a whole different discussion. First of all, there were not more. We did not have more African Americans in Congress during Reconstruction than we have now. No, there was about 22 in Congress during Reconstruction. Reconstruction is 1865 to 1877. You got 56 now. So right off the bat, when you say something like that, I'm like, what are you talking about? But see this, but they should have had a historian. They should have had at least one historian on that panel. This is one of the problems with some of those panel discussions. People mean well, but you don't have the right people on the panel. You need at least one historian. You need like a Dr. Greg Carr, okay? Dr. Greg Carr, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Professor James Small, Professor Kabahaya Kamene. Okay, you need an economist on that panel, like a Dr. Julian Malveaux or Dr. Claude Anderson. You need an economist on the panel. Okay, so yeah, you know, I know people mean well, but it's like, dude, come on, man. But I got to go through, and when you look at Candace Owens, Candace has proven if you look at she's proven that she has no clue what she's talking about, has a poor understanding of history. Okay. And somebody posted, you know, one of the clips of it, and I commented on it and went through and showed what was historically inaccurate and things like this. And what I find interesting is when people talk about the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, nobody wants to talk about the Lily White movement in 1928. It was the Lily White movement in 1928 that helped push African Americans out of the Republican Party. And that's why we went to the Democratic Party, because we were being pushed out of the Republican Party because the Republicans were trying to get Herbert Hoover elected as president during the 1928 presidential election. Herbert Hoover was running against Al Smith. Al Smith was a Northern Democrat. He wasn't a Southern segregationist Dixiecrat. He was a Northern Democrat. The Republican Party implemented a 5-state Southern strategy, okay? A 5-state Southern strategy to appeal to 5 Southern states that were former Confederate states to get them to vote for Herbert Hoover, okay? This was, and the Lily White, you have to research the Lily White movement of 1928. See, most people, including Reverend Al Sharpton, and I like Reverend Al, listen to his radio show every day, okay, but I listen to what he says, and he has a poor understanding of history also. This is not an attack on Reverend Al, but I'm just telling you. Many people are under the misconception that the reason why African Americans switched over from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party is because of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That's largely factually, historically inaccurate, because by 1960, 2/3 of African Americans had already switched over to the Democratic Party. No, you got to go back 40 years before that, about 40 years before that, to the 1920s. And what was going on in the 1920s, because you had a rise in the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan was rejuvenated by the movie The Birth of a Nation that came out February 8, 1915. You had the Great Migration taking place, which starts basically in 1915. 1915 to 1970, 6 million African Americans migrate from the South up north and out west. it really gets kicked off because of World War I. World War I is 1914 and 1918. So you have African Americans migrating up north, going into Detroit and Gary, Indiana, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, things like this, moving into the inner cities, dealing with overcrowding, dealing with competition for housing, competition for jobs, it puts a strain on public services. So African Americans are trying to get our issues and concerns addressed. Dealing with, we're facing racism up north. We're facing disparity when it comes to wages. We're in many times we're paying twice as much for very poor living conditions. And we're also dealing with an increase in the power of the Ku Klux Klan. So the Klan in 1926, the Klan, they have a rally there in Washington, D.C., in front of the U.S. Capitol building. Okay, so we are trying to get these issues and concerns met by the Republican Party. The Republican Party is increasingly ignoring our issues to appeal to Southern segregationists to get their vote so they can maintain power. All right, so we see the Democratic Party, we start slowly going over to the Democratic Party, especially after President Roosevelt wins. So we see the Democratic Party as being more receptive, in general, more receptive to our issues and concerns. So it's going to happen, that transition happens over the course of going to the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s, over the course of about 3 decades, and then we go on to 1960. It wasn't all overnight. Okay, but it's dealing with who can best address our issues. 1947, the Democrats have a more for 1947 and 48, going into that presidential campaign, they have a more pro-civil rights platform. And then you're going to have Strom Thurmond, who was a Southern segregationist Dixiecrat. Strom Thurmond runs for president as a Dixiecrat. Okay. And then it's going to be in 48 that they bring back out that Confederate battle flag that people mistakenly think is the Confederate flag. So the flag that was on the General Lee car on the Dukes of Hazzard is not the Confederate flag. That's the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee's army. Okay, there were 3 flags that flew over the Confederate States of America from 1861 to 1865, the Confederacy. There were 3 flags. That flag that was on the General Lee car was never one of those flags, because that flag is not the Confederate flag. That's the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee's army. But since we don't understand history, we don't know any of this stuff. So what we're dealing with is that when we look at why, and I'm trying to find I got a packet of notes here dealing with this, because I did a 3-hour lecture dealing with the history of why we switched from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. Okay, and it's at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And it's a 3-hour lecture, and I go in depth into all this history, break all this stuff down, and so, but this is what happens. This is an example of what happens when we don't understand history. We keep falling for this nonsense. But Candace Owens is someone who doesn't understand the history. And in 2016, she was running a website, and one of the things the website was doing was attacking Donald Trump. So you have to ask the question, what happened? All right. Look at the article from newsone.com. 5 times Candace Owens lied to Congress while testifying about white nationalism. 5 times Candace Owens lied to Congress about testifying about white nationalism. And then this dealt with in the House of Representatives, this dealt with the committee hearing on the rise of white nationalism. Okay. And one of the things it talks about here, and I'll post this link, you can check this out. One of the things it talks about is when she talked about the Southern strategy is a myth. The Southern strategy is a myth. That's a lie. Candace Owens claimed that Black Republicans are mistreated by their Democratic counterparts for having audacity to think for themselves and become educated about our history and the myth of things, okay? Like the Southern strategy, which never happened, okay? Candace Owens, tell me which history books you've read. I listen to you, I don't ever hear you cite history books. Which history books did you read, okay? She said the Southern strategy never happened. No, that's not true. The Lily White movement in 1928 was a Southern strategy. So this article goes on to say, of course, the Southern strategy is a very real thing that has been documented millions of times over, and was described by History.com as, quote, the Republican Party's successful plan of getting the white Southern population to shift their views from Democratic to Republican. Now, History.com is the official website of the History Channel for those that are not familiar with History.com. Okay. Now, if you follow me, you know I talk about History.com a lot because I read the articles they have there. All right. And so we'll post this this link here. This deals with this is from newsone.com, dealing with 5 times Candace Owens lied. 5 times Candace Owens lied to Congress while testifying about white nationalism. And it goes through and fact checks her and shows how what she's saying was not historically accurate. Okay. And what I find interesting is also that she still refuses to debate Roland Martin, because Roland challenged her and Charlie Kirk, I think it is Charlie Crist, who was at Turning Point Communications. Okay. He challenged them to a debate. He said, I'll debate both of you at the same time. And Charlie Kirk, that's his name, Charlie Kirk. And they haven't taken them up on that. I wonder why. Let me see, where did I put that? Because I just had, we'll come to some more of your questions here. Just saw that that packet dealing with that history. I just saw it yesterday. So I don't know where I put it, but yeah. So this is why we have to study history, and a people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past in the present and the future to meet the needs of the community. Okay. It's like this same argument going over, it's like this whole argument going over undocumented immigrants, right? This is a very, very old argument. And what a lot of people don't understand is, like, if you go back to Herbert Hoover, you know, I did a broadcast dealing with how in the 1930s, during the Great Depression, the U.S. deported 1.8 million people of Mexican ancestry back to Mexico. Okay, 60% of them were Mexican Americans. Okay, 60% of them were Mexican Americans, but they said that these people were taking white people's jobs, so they deported them back to Mexico. This is a very, very old argument, very old debate. And you have a lot of misinformation and people operating based upon a lot of misinformation. But what people fail to understand is that white supremacy pits groups of oppressed people against each other to fight one another so the 1% stay in power. The same thing happened right after slavery ended. And you had, or even during slavery, towards the end of slavery, and you had 12 million European immigrants coming to this country. Okay, and they're going to work in, a lot of them going to work in factories with low pay, working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. You don't have child labor laws at this time. Their labor is being exploited. Okay, because what white supremacy does is it pits groups It pits groups of oppressed people against each other to fight one another so the 1% stay in power. We go back to Bacon's Rebellion in 1675 and 1676 in the colony of Virginia. It's going to be after Bacon's Rebellion that the term white is going to be used in the colonies for the people who we call white people. Because like when you read Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr., you read chapter 2, one of the things he talks about is how it wasn't until the late 17th century, the late 1600s, that the term white was used for the English. They were called English or Christians. In general, they weren't called white. But because of Bacon's Rebellion, what happened is that you had European indentured servants who united with enslaved Africans to fight because they had a common oppressor. Okay? This is Bacon's Rebellion. But a lot of us don't understand history. So it's going to be after that the effort is made to break up that alliance between these poor European indentured servants and enslaved Africans. But what white supremacy does is it pits groups of oppressed people against each other to fight one another so the 1% stays in power. If we go look at the U.S. Civil War, people should ask the question, well, during the Civil War, most of the people that fought on behalf of the South to maintain slavery, most of them were not the wealthy plantation owners and slave owners. These were poor white men, most of them. Okay, well, when you read the statements of secession, Mississippi, Texas, things like this, you read their statements of secession, they talk about how slavery was central to maintaining their wealth and maintaining their way of life. So how did the rich, wealthy plantation owner, and you're gonna have a few of them fighting the Civil War, but the majority of the men fighting on behalf of the South to maintain slavery, most of them didn't own slaves. Most of them were poor. So how did the wealthy plantation owner, how did they convince poor white men to go risk their lives in the Civil War to fight for something that they didn't have? They told them if the slaves are free, they're going to take your jobs. But the slaves were already doing your jobs and they were doing it for free. White supremacy pits groups of oppressed people against each other to fight one another. There were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. We were the shipbuilders, we were the anchor makers, we were the engine builders, we were the blacksmiths, the coppersmiths, the barbers, all of that. There were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. Okay, if you look at the book, The Other Slaves by Ronald Lewis, and there's one other person here. I talked about this in one of my recent broadcasts. They lay out all the skills, trades, and crafts that we had in this country from 1619 to 1865, okay? So then after the Civil War ends, you're gonna have all these labor unions pop up, okay? And these labor unions are like the National Labor Union founded in 1866. You're going to have the AFL, American Federation of Labor, 1875, with Samuel Gompers, Gompers. Go watch the broadcast I did dealing with the African American roots of Labor Day, and I dealt with the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. Okay, so all those jobs were jobs that we had when we were working for free. We were the skilled labor. Now you have white people who were skilled laborers also. That's another thing. To say that you didn't have white people who were skilled laborers, that's not true. If you want to say we dominated the skilled trades and like the majority of the skilled labor was us, okay, that's understandable. But to say white people didn't have skilled labor, no, because you had European immigrants coming to this country and they had skills also. But what's going to happen is these labor unions are going to be created to lock us out of the jobs that we were doing for free for 246 years. And then we're going to be locked back into agriculture with the sharecropping system. So this is why they needed a historian on that panel. Because I'm telling you right now, if I'd been on that panel, it would have gone differently. Okay, it would have been a different story. 1947, the Democratic Party adopts a more pro-civil rights platform, and Strom Thurmond runs as a Dixiecrat, okay? And just outside the Capitol building, you had in 1926, you had the Ku Klux Klan, who had a demonstration because, see, the Klan was rejuvenated by the movie The Birth of a Nation, 1915. That's why you have to understand the chronology of history. The Klan had pretty much died out by 1915. They were founded December 24th, 1865 in Pulaski, Tennessee. All right, but this movie, The Birth of a Nation, that shows the Klan as being the heroes. The movie is based upon a novel by a man named Reverend Thomas Dixon. The name of the novel was called The Klansman. And this movie calls race riots in the streets. That's why you have to research The Birth of a Nation and see how The Birth of a Nation then ties into World War I, then ties into 1919, which is the year after World War I ended, called the Red Summer. And you had over 25 major race riots in this country. Go back, look at the video I did dealing with the history of the Red Summer. Okay, so we have to understand our chronology of this history. So when we talk about politics, you can't talk about politics without understanding history. This is why the presentation I do at the on the Black Agenda Tour is so important, because I deal with the intersection of history and politics. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. And we have to understand how movements take place in response to conditions. Laws and policies are put in place to address the issues that the movements were created to address. Then those laws and policies that are put in place to address the movements then create conditions. Then movements take place to address the conditions that the laws created. So you have a cycle. But you have to understand how all of this intersects. Because slavery was law in this country and sanctioned by the U.S. Constitution. All right, so check out the 6 DVD Black Migrations Bundle Pack, because my presentation dealing with the history of why African Americans switched from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party is in that. It's one of those 6 DVDs also. So that's on sale. That 6 DVD bundle pack is on sale, $50. And it also includes 6 principles of political self-defense. Now, in the version I do at the Black Agenda Tour, it's going to be a little different, because each one I do on this tour is a little different than the previous one, okay? And, I address certain things that take place there at the conference, certain things that happen in the news as well. All right. So let me post this again here. All right, but this is why, the history and culture is so important. The people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past and the present and the future to meet the needs of the community. And, what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. It's our history and culture that gives us our values, our interests, and our principles, our VIPs, our values, our interests, and our principles. This influences how we see ourselves. This gives us our self-esteem, our self-development, our self-worth. This gives us a cultural paradigm that we see reality through. It influences our economic empowerment and our political empowerment. You have a synthesis of all of this. This all intersects. So it's not just one thing. It's not just African history and culture and learning Medu-Neter and trying to metaphysically transport ourselves to 3000 BC in ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt. It's not just having economics and you're just talking about wealth creation, because we can all have stock portfolios valued at $5 million and we can still spend 97% of our dollars with people that don't look like us, because that foundation is not in place, and you can still be wealthy and hate yourself. We can look at entertainers and athletes, and we can see that they hate themselves. I just talked about Lil Kim, and the year 2000 interview that Lil Kim did with Newsweek.com, Newsweek magazine, called A Whole Lot of Lil Kim. And she talked about how she had low self-esteem. She talked about how the divorce between her parents affected her. She talked about how her boyfriends will always cheat on her with women that had European-looking features, okay? So when she gets some money, what does she do? She gets breast implants, she gets blue eye contacts, she gets blonde hair, and then in 2016, we saw images she posted of herself on Instagram, and with very, very light skin. She didn't look like the same little Kim that we saw back in '96. Okay, so we have to understand this. You have to have a synthesis of this, and wealth creation and economic empowerment are not the same thing. Okay, we have to understand the difference between them. Economic empowerment comes when you own the land in your community, you own the businesses, you control the economics, you own the gas stations, the grocery stores, the radio stations, the TV stations, the dry cleaners. You can employ your people. You grow your food. You own the land. You own the office buildings, the car washes. This is economic empowerment. Okay, wealth creation. You can have 401ks and you can have Roth IRAs. You can have a $5 million stock portfolio, right? But you can still be spending 97% of your dollars when people don't look like you. You have wealth creation. I'm not against wealth creation, but we have to transform that wealth into economic empowerment. Those are two different things. All right, so look, hey guys, we're going to get out of here. Let me see here. What was I going to get? So the other slaves. What? Let me see. Where did I have that? I thought I had. Because see, what happened was that the way I found out, one of the ways I found out about all the skills, trades, and crafts that we had in this country from 1619 to 1865 is at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History in Detroit, and they have a display. Yeah, here it is right here. They have a display when you go through the main exhibit called And Still We Rise. On the wall, they have displayed all these skills, trades, and crafts. And they're listed there, but they're not numbered. And they have a sign there that says you can't take pictures, right? So I went home, got a pen and pad, came back and spent an hour writing them down. And I numbered them. That's how I know it's 262. Okay, but it's from the book, The Other Slaves, Mechanics, Artisans, and Craftsmen. The Other Slaves, Mechanics, Artisans, and Craftsmen from is written by James E. Newton and Ronald Lewis. James E. Newton and Ronald Lewis from 1978. Okay, so that's how I know it. And some of them, let me see, some of them were, let me see if they list them here. Okay, I was trying to see in this book here if they list any of them. In one of these pages, they do. How white folks got so rich. All right, but yeah, all those skills, trades, and crafts, we had mastered those. All right. Okay, I'll have to find it later. All right, guys, look, hey, we have to get out of here. If you like this type of information, also, you can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show. Then also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Be sure to register for the online course I teach. If you like this type of information, the online course I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, where they didn't teach you in school, will blow you away. And I do a PowerPoint presentation, so the presentation is visual. We do it online at our online school. It's an 8-week, 16-hour online course. All the sessions are recorded, so if you miss anything, you can go back and watch it over and over again. So it's regularly $130 on sale, $80, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay, so we'll post the link here. So we do that class Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as soon as you register, you can watch classes 1 through 4. And then there's about 36 hours of bonus content also. Okay. All right. Okay, African American business owners, email us at customer service at africanhistorynetwork.com. And if you want to learn about investing in the stock market, trading, stocks, options, futures, the foreign exchange market, day trading, visit theprofitroom.com. Theprofitroom.com can help you with that. They are an education company that has mentorship programs that are designed for beginners. Okay. And one of the things they specialize in is one-on-one mentorship and day trading also. Visit theprofitroom.com. All right, guys, we got to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now it's correct your own behavior, what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. Right now it's correct your own behavior. Not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.